The sun is slipping behind the western hills of Galilee, casting long, bruised shadows across a barren, wind-swept slope. For centuries, readers have viewed what follows as an act of emergency compassion, a spontaneous moment where a kind teacher takes pity. Prasiai, prasiai. It translates literally to garden beds, arranged in orderly squares across the hillside. Their colorful garments made them look like a newly planted garden blooming in the wasteland. And the text makes a point, to tell us they are seated on green grass. Why mention the color of the grass? In a desolate, wind-swept Eremos, green vegetation is extremely rare. It only appears briefly in the early spring, right around the time of the Passover. But the detail is not just meteorological, it is deeply prophetic. Remember the visceral compassion Jesus felt just moments earlier? He saw them as sheep without a shepherd. Every Jewish person sitting on that hillside knew the most famous song of King David by heart. Psalm 23, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures." The imagery is breathtaking in its precision. The people are bruised, scattered, and weary from years of corrupt leadership. The true shepherd steps into the desolate place, organizes them as the new, restored camp of Israel, and literally makes his flock lie down in green pastures on a crowd that stayed too long, performing a quick miracle to keep people from fainting on the road home. The chaos is over. The sheep are resting. The king has taken his rightful place at the head of the table, but a glaring, undeniable problem remains. The camp is set. The people are seated in orderly ranks, looking up with quiet expectation. Yet the evening sky is darkening, and the shepherd has no visible food to offer them. The mathematics of their starvation has not changed. To feed this new Israel, Jesus does not point to the heavens and call down manna. Instead, he turns back to his frantic disciples, demanding that they provide the solution. The test that began with Philip has not been canceled. It is escalating. And the entire architecture of this massive, history-altering miracle will now rest on the contents of one small, entirely inadequate offering. The hillside is now quiet. The frenetic energy of the mob has been replaced by the structured discipline of the camp. Thousands of men, women, and children sit in ordered ranks on the green grass, waiting. But the silence only magnifies the disciples' panic. The test has reached its breaking point. They have no money, no market, and no bread. Then, Andrew steps out of the crowd. It is remembered as a story about divine catering, an unexpected rescue from an awkward logistical failure. He has been searching the masses, desperately looking for any hidden supply. He returns with an offering so small it borders on insulting. He has found a young boy carrying a meager traveler's ration, 5 barley loaves and 2 small fish. Even as he presents it, Andrew realizes the absurdity of the situation. He immediately adds, "But what are they for so many?" Philip had focused on the magnitude of what was missing. Andrew focuses on the insignificance of what is present. Both are trapped in the illusion of scarcity. They are looking at the math of the wilderness, measuring the crushing weight of the demand against the pathetic reality of their supply. But the specific type of bread Andrew brings forward reveals an even deeper layer of inadequacy. The Gospel of John is careful to note that these are barley loaves. In the ancient Mediterranean world, wheat was the grain of the wealthy, the comfortable, and the secure. Barley was the absolute bottom of the agricultural hierarchy. It was coarse, heavy, and difficult to digest. It was the food of the desperately poor, often used as fodder for livestock. A traveler carrying barley loaves was a person of zero social consequence. The offering is not just mathematically insufficient. It is socially insignificant. It is the cheapest, most pathetic resource on the entire hillside. But that familiar reading misses the entire architecture of the moment. If you turn to the Gospel of John, an incredible detail. If Jesus were merely demonstrating divine power, he did not need the boy's lunch. He is the Word who spoke the universe into existence. He could have bypassed human involvement entirely, commanding a royal feast to materialize directly onto the laps of the seated thousands. He could have called thunder from the evening sky and rained fresh manna onto the grass. But that is not how the shepherd operates. Jesus does not dismiss the inadequate offering. He does not wave it away in favor of a grander, independent miracle. Instead, he issues a quiet, staggering command: "Bring them here to me." This is the central contrast of the wilderness. Jesus does not demand that the disciples find enough to solve the problem. He demands that they surrender the exact thing they know is not enough. He requires their poverty. He forces them to place their deeply embarrassing inadequacy directly into his hands. The tension on the hillside is palpable. 5 flat, coarse loaves, and 2 dried, salted fish rest in the hands of the carpenter from Nazareth. It is barely enough food to sustain one small child. Yet it is standing against the roaring hunger of thousands. What Jesus does in the very next moment is recorded by the gospel writers with painstaking precision. They do not describe a flash of blinding light or a theatrical display of magic. Emerges before a single loaf of bread is touched. Jesus turns to Philip, a disciple from nearby Bethsaida, who knows the local geography. Instead, they describe his physical movements using a specific sequence of words that would eventually shape the worship of the global church for 2,000 years. Because the provision does not suddenly appear out there in the crowd, the miracle is about to unfold exclusively in the hands of the host. The thousands are seated in silent, orderly ranks across the grass. Every eye is fixed on the center of the camp, where the carpenter stands, holding the meager rations of a poor child. What Jesus does next is so deliberate, so deeply significant, that all the synoptic gospel writers, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, record his actions using the exact same 4 verbs. He took the bread, he looked up to heaven and blessed it. He broke it, and he gave it to the disciples. To a first-century Jewish audience, this sequence of physical movements was instantly recognizable. At every meal, it was the strict duty of the paterfamilias, the head of the household, to take the bread, give thanks to God, tear the loaf with his hands, and distribute it to his family. By performing this precise ritual over the vast crowd, Jesus is not just serving a meal, he is publicly declaring himself the father of this new wilderness family. He is acting as the head of the restored household of Israel. But as Jesus begins to tear the coarse barley loaves, a staggering physical reality begins to unfold, and supply chains, and asks a direct, startling question: where are we to buy bread so that these people may eat? We often imagine the miracle happening out in the crowd, perhaps with the bread multiplying in the baskets as the disciples walked among the seated groups. But the Greek grammar reveals a different, far more intimate mechanism. The verbs describing how Jesus took, blessed, and broke the bread are written as completed, one-time actions. But the verb for giving the bread, edidu, is in the imperfect tense. It means a continuous, ongoing action. He kept on giving. The multiplication did not happen in the baskets, and it did not happen in the mouths of the crowd. The miracle happened exclusively in the hands of Christ. At the exact moment of the breaking, every time Jesus fractured the rough, dry bread, there was more to give. The disciples walked out into the massive grid of people, their arms heavy with provision. They distributed it to the hungry, returning to the center of the camp with empty hands, only to find the shepherd still breaking, still giving, still supplying. The sound of crust snapping and tearing echoed over the hillside, an unbroken rhythm of impossible abundance. As long as the bread was broken, the supply never ended. Decades later, when the early Christians gathered in secret house churches across the Roman Empire, they would read these 4 verbs: he took, he blessed, he broke, he gave, and they would instantly recognize the pattern. It is the exact sequence of verbs Jesus would use months later. Philip's mind immediately races into cold, hard arithmetic. He calculates the wages of 8 months of labor, 200 denarii, and in a quiet upper room in Jerusalem. on the night before his execution, when he offered his own body to be broken for the life of the world. The physical bread in the wilderness was only a shadow of a much greater sacrifice. The Gospel writers record that the crowd ate until they were fully satisfied. The Greek word used is kortazo, a term often used to describe animals grazing in a lush pasture until they are completely gorged. The shepherd has made his flock lie down in green pastures, and he has fed them until they cannot eat another bite. The impossible mathematics of the wilderness have been entirely rewritten by the hands of the host. But as the final person wipes the crumbs from their face and the sun completely disappears below the horizon, Jesus refuses to let the event simply fade into the night. The sign is not complete. The meal is over. But the miracle requires one final, highly specific action. He turns to the disciples, pointing to the fractured remnants scattered across the grass, and issues the most mysterious command of the day. The feast is over. The frantic anxiety of the afternoon has dissolved into the heavy, satisfied lethargy of a massive crowd that has finally eaten its fill. The dark has settled completely over the Sea of Galilee, illuminated only by the faint light of stars and the scattered, makeshift torches of the camp, realizes it would barely buy a single mouthful for everyone present. The math is impossible. The situation is completely hopeless. But the ground beneath the thousands of resting people is covered in remnants. Jesus issues a final directive to the 12 exhausted disciples. According to the Gospel of John, he says, "Gather up the leftover fragments, that nothing may be lost." At first glance, this looks like a simple lesson in frugality, a divine command not to waste the miraculous provision. But the Gospel writers are meticulously counting, and the final tally reveals that this cleanup effort is the climax of the entire sign. The disciples move through the seated grids of people, picking up the discarded crusts and uneaten portions of the barley loaves. They use stout, wicker traveling baskets called kophinoi, commonly carried by Jewish men to keep their food ceremonially clean in Gentile territory. When they return to the center of the camp, they do not just have a pile of crumbs. They are hauling immense weight. The text specifies that they filled exactly 12 baskets with the broken pieces. This number is not a coincidence. It is the architectural capstone of the miracle. Jesus did not multiply the bread to create a random surplus. He did not leave 3 baskets, or 50 baskets, or just enough to cover the grass. He produced exactly 12. To the Jewish mind, the number 12 is not just mathematics. It is identity. Yet the Gospel writer quietly adds a single, startling sentence that changes the meaning of the entire event. He said this: "It represents the 12 tribes of Israel, the ancient foundation of the nation. For centuries, those tribes had been scattered across the known world, fractured by civil war, crushed by foreign empires, and lost to exile. The prophets had long promised that when the true king arrived, he would go out into the desolate places and gather the scattered, broken remnants of Israel back together." Look at the visual theology Jesus is constructing in the dark. He has brought the people out to the wilderness. He has seated them as the new camp of Israel. He has fed them with bread from heaven. And now, standing in the center of the camp, are his 12 chosen disciples, the new patriarchs of a new era, each holding a heavy basket of broken pieces. The Greek word used for these fragments is klasmata. It literally means that which is broken. Jesus is declaring that he is the shepherd who gathers the broken things. He is promising that under his reign, the fractured, scattered remnants of his people will be carefully collected, held securely, and entirely restored, just as he commanded. Absolutely nothing will be lost. It is a staggering, beautiful revelation of divine care. The proof of his identity is undeniable. To test him, for he himself knew what he would do. Jesus did not stumble into an unforeseen crisis. 12 heavy baskets rest in the hands of 12 tired men. An overwhelming physical proof that the impossible has just occurred. But as the implications of the miracle begin to ripple through the thousands of men sitting in the dark, the atmosphere on the hillside shifts. The The quiet satisfaction of the meal rapidly turns into a dangerous, electric fervor. The crowd has seen the power, and they have seen the provision, but they are about to tragically misinterpret the entire purpose of the sign. The greatest miracle of provision is suddenly turning into a terrifying misunderstanding. The darkness of the hillside is suddenly broken by a rising, agitated murmur. As the massive crowd stares at the 12 heavy baskets, they begin to connect the historical dots. The wilderness, the organization of the camp, the miraculous bread. The conclusion they reach is not spiritual, it is violently political. The Gospel of John reveals the terrifying climax of the evening. The people recognize that this is the prophet promised by Moses, but their next move exposes the deep fracture in their hearts. They decide to take Jesus by force and make him king. They want to weaponize the miracle. If this man can feed an army out of nothing, he can march on Jerusalem, overthrow the Roman occupation, and restore the empire of David. But Jesus issues a shocking refusal. The man who just organized a camp. The air is growing cool, carrying the scent of dry dust and lake salt. Spread across the hillside is a sea of human faces. He engineered a wilderness classroom. He deliberately led thousands of people into a place of absolute scarcity, allowed the sun to set. Like a military general, completely rejects the crown. He withdraws further up the dark mountain, slipping away into the night entirely alone. The next morning, the relentless crowd tracks him down in the synagogue at Capernaum. They are hungry again, and they want another meal. But instead of breaking more bread, Jesus delivers a devastating indictment. He looks at the very people he had so carefully fed the night before and says, "Truly, truly, I say to you, you are seeking me, not because you saw signs, but because you ate your fill of the loaves." They had completely misread the miracle. A sign is meant to point beyond itself. The physical bread was simply a signpost, pointing directly to the divine identity of the man who broke it. But the crowd did not care about his identity. They only cared about their stomachs. This moment addresses a massive objection often raised against the miracles of Christ. If he had the power to feed thousands instantly, why did he not just eradicate physical hunger permanently? Why did he not seize political control and fix the broken, oppressive systems of the ancient world? Because Jesus knows that fixing the external circumstance without healing the internal human fracture is a temporary illusion. Physical bread will only leave a person hungry again tomorrow, and forced his closest followers to confront their own utter powerlessness. This was not an emergency. It was a setup. Political revolutions merely exchange one broken ruler for another. Jesus did not come to temporarily alleviate the symptoms of a dying world. He came to cure the disease. He tells the demanding crowd exactly who he is. "I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me shall not hunger, and whoever believes in me shall never thirst." The tragedy of the 5,000 is that they wanted the bread, but they did not want the bread of life. They desperately wanted the provision, but they had absolutely no desire to submit to the provider. When Jesus refuses to be their political pawn and instead demands their spiritual allegiance, the vast majority of the crowd abandons him. They walk away. This ancient rejection forces a devastating mirror in front of every modern reader. When you enter your own wilderness, when the money runs out, when the medical diagnosis is given, when the relationship fractures, or when the silence of God feels unbearable, what are you actually asking him to do? Are you seeking the host? Or are you just demanding the bread? It is terrifyingly easy to treat Jesus as nothing more than a divine emergency mechanism, a way to fix the terrifying mathematics of your life. But the wilderness is not a place where God simply fixes your comfort. It is a place where he exposes what you truly rely upon. Out of all the miracles recorded across the New Testament, the blind receiving sight, the dead raised, the raging storms. And this is where the historical sign on the mountain finally meets the reality of your own life. Step back and look at the complete architecture of this event. The miracle on the hillside is not ultimately a story about solving physical scarcity. It is a story about stepping into the wilderness to discover the true identity of the host. It is a revelation of what happens when human inadequacy is finally surrendered to divine authority. When we face the desolate places in our own lives, we often act exactly like the disciples. We scan the darkening horizon, calculate the impossible cost, look at our profoundly limited resources, and panic. We bring our meager, embarrassing offerings to God, our exhaustion, our fractured faith, our unresolved grief, our failing strength, and we echo the ancient anxiety of Andrew. But what are these among so many? We believe the illusion of scarcity. We think our poverty disqualifies us from the provision of heaven. We assume the wilderness is a place where we will simply starve. But Jesus never asks you to manufacture a supply you do not possess. He only asks you to place the reality of your inadequacy directly into His hands. He does not despise your barley loaves. He does not turn away from your lack. He takes your small, insufficient offering, and He breaks it. Stilled on the Sea of Galilee, the feeding of the 5,000 holds a unique and powerful distinction. It is the single, and this is perhaps the hardest, a most beautiful truth of the wilderness. The multiplication always happens in the breaking. When God allows your plans, your pride, or your illusion of control to be fractured, He is not destroying you. He is tearing away your self-reliance so that you can actually be fed. He is ensuring that the spiritual supply never stops. Because the supply is no longer coming from your own strength. It is coming continuously from the hands of the true shepherd. This changes everything about how we view the leftover fragments of our own lives. The things you thought were ruined, the years you thought were wasted, the failures you thought disqualified you. The shattered pieces of your own story are not discarded in the kingdom of God. Remember the Greek word klasmata. Jesus is the King who specifically commands that the broken things be carefully gathered. He values the fragments. In His economy, absolutely nothing is wasted. Look one last time at that windswept slope in Galilee. The sun has completely disappeared behind the western hills. The desolate place is cloaked in the cold dark of the wilderness. But the terrifying mathematics of the afternoon have been entirely reversed. The chaotic, demanding mob is no longer a scattered, bruised flock without a shepherd. Miracle, recorded in all four Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Each author brings a different perspective, but all four insist they have been seated in green pastures and fed until they are completely satisfied. The panicked disciples are no longer frantic. Instead, standing quietly in the night air are 12 ordinary men, their arms straining under the weight of 12 heavy baskets. They are holding undeniable, physical proof that what is surrendered to Christ is never truly lost. It is only multiplied, broken, and gathered again. The next time you find yourself standing in the dark, surrounded by impossible demands and empty hands, do not panic over what you lack. The true shepherd is already standing in the desolate place with you, and He already knows exactly what He is going to do. If this deeper look into the text has helped you see Scripture more clearly, please consider subscribing and sharing this study with someone who might be walking through their own wilderness right now. Thank you for watching. That we look at this specific hillside on this specific evening, because what happened here was not just a miraculous meal, it was a sign. Throughout this investigation, one primary symbol will keep returning: a simple fragment of broken bread, fractured in human hands, multiplied beyond human calculation, and gathered until the wilderness is full. This broken bread was never meant to simply fill empty stomachs for a single night. It was designed to answer a far more radical question: who is the host? Standing in the desert? To understand why this meal shook the ancient world, we cannot begin with the bread itself. Exhausted, wind-burned, and desperate. More than 5,000 men, not counting the women and children, sit in the dirt. We have to look at the ground beneath their feet and the ancient, dangerous shadow that hung over the desolate place where they stood. The Gospel writers are highly specific about where this impossible test takes place. They do not merely describe a pleasant hillside near the lake. Across the accounts, they deliberately use a specific Greek phrase, eremos topos, It translates directly to a solitary, deserted, or desolate place, a wilderness. For a modern reader, a wilderness is simply geography, a place without roads, markets, or modern conveniences. But for a first-century Jew living under the suffocating grip of Roman occupation, the wilderness was not merely a location on a map. It was a profound theological memory. Centuries earlier, the nation of Israel was not born in a palace or a wealthy capital. It was born in the dirt, escaping the brutal slavery of Egypt. The people followed Moses into a barren, unforgiving wasteland. Out there, completely cut off from human supply chains, they were forced into absolute dependence on heaven. And in that desolate place, God kept them alive with bread from the sky, manna. The wilderness became permanently etched into the Jewish psyche as the ultimate theater of divine rescue. It was the original proving ground where God provided for his people. They have walked for miles, drawn out of their villages by a whisper, a promise, a man. By the time Jesus stands on this Galilean slope, Israel is once again a captive nation. Roman boots patrol their streets. Heavy taxation drains the profits from their fishing boats and grain fields. The political atmosphere is a volatile powder keg, waiting for a single spark. And among the desperate peasants and radical factions, a very specific expectation was burning. Ancient Jewish tradition held that when the true Messiah, the deliverer, greater than Moses, finally appeared, he would announce his arrival by repeating the miracles of the Exodus. He would lead the faithful back into the wilderness, and he would once again provide manna. This explains the terrifying momentum of the crowd. When Jesus attempts to retreat by boat to this Eremos Topos, the people do not simply let him go. They track his trajectory across the water. They run on foot along the northern shoreline of the Sea of Galilee, a surging mass of humanity, pulling men from every village they pass. By the time the bow of Jesus' boat strikes the shore, thousands have already arrived, waiting in the dust. This is not a polite congregation gathering for a casual religious teaching. This is a massive, spontaneous migration of desperate people. They are exhausted by Roman oppression. They are chasing a man who has healed the sick and commanded the wind. But now, the excitement of the day is giving way to a cold, physical reality. Night is coming, and there is nothing here to eat. Secretly hoping he is the rebel king who will finally overthrow the empire. They are looking for a military commander. They are waiting for the sky to open and the bread to fall. If a first-century revolutionary had gathered 5,000 able-bodied men in a desolate place, away from the eyes of the Roman governor, he would have seized the moment. He would have weaponized their zeal. He would have organized them into a militia, fanned the flames of their political anger, and prepared a march on Jerusalem. He would have used their hunger for his own power. But Jesus does not behave like a political opportunist. His posture in the face of this surging mob completely contradicts their expectations. When he steps out of the boat, he does not see a potential army. He does not see a political weapon waiting to be aimed at Rome. He sees a tragedy that breaks him open. The Gospel writers tell us exactly what Jesus felt when the roar of the crowd met him on the shore, and the ancient words they choose reveal a spiritual crisis far deeper than anything an empire could ever inflict. When the wooden hull of the boat grinds against the stones of the shoreline, the noise of the crowd is deafening. Thousands of people. The disciples stand in a tight, anxious cluster, scanning the darkening horizon. They do not see a divine opportunity. Press forward. Their faces thick with the dust of the road and the heavy expectation of a political uprising. They want a commander. They are ready for a king. But the Gospel of Mark records a response from Jesus that instantly shifts the entire atmosphere of the narrative. When he went ashore, he saw a great crowd, and he had compassion on them, because they were like sheep without a shepherd. In English, the word compassion often sounds polite, a mild, sympathetic sadness, or a gentle urge to help. It is the emotion we feel when we see a stranger struggling with heavy bags. But the original Greek term used by the Gospel writers is far more violent and profound. The word is splachnisomai. It is derived from the word for the internal organs, the gut, the viscera. In the ancient world, the bowels were considered the physical seat of deep human emotion. This word describes a physical twisting of the stomach, a yearning so intense it causes bodily pain. Jesus does not look at this frantic, demanding, misguided mob with mild annoyance or distant pity. He is torn apart from the inside out. Why does this massive crowd provoke such a visceral reaction? The text gives the exact reason: because they were like sheep without a shepherd. To a modern reader, calling a crowd sheep might suggest they are merely naive, unthinking, or easily led. But in the ancient Jewish world, they see a logistical nightmare unfolding in real time. They see empty pockets, barren ground, and thousands of hungry mouths. This phrase was not a casual metaphor. It was a devastating political and spiritual indictment. For centuries, the leaders of Israel, the kings, the priests, the religious elite were strictly commanded by God to be the shepherds of the nation. They were supposed to protect the vulnerable, guide the lost, and feed the hungry. But they had entirely failed. The current leaders, the Herodian dynasty plotting in their palaces, and the religious elite building heavy, impossible burdens had fleeced the flock. They had used the people to build their own wealth and secure their own status, leaving the common men and women to be devoured by Roman taxation and crushed by spiritual legalism. The flock of Israel was bruised, scattered, and bleeding. 600 years earlier, the prophet Ezekiel had delivered a thunderous promise regarding this exact crisis. In Ezekiel chapter 34, God pronounces absolute judgment on the corrupt, selfish leaders of Israel. Then, he makes a startling, breathtaking declaration. Because the earthly shepherds have abandoned the flock, God himself would step down, out of heaven. He declares, "I myself will be the shepherd of my sheep. I will seek the lost, and I will bring back the strayed, and I will bind up the injured, and I will strengthen the weak." When Jesus stands in the dirt and looks out at the chaotic, desperate faces pressing against the shoreline, he is not just a kind teacher feeling sorry for a tired audience. He is stepping. The nearest towns are hours away on foot, and the sun will not wait for them. Their advice to Jesus, into the ancient promise of Ezekiel. The creator of the universe has entered the desolate place to personally gather his shattered flock. The true shepherd has finally arrived. But a shepherd does not merely feel emotion. A shepherd takes command. If Jesus is truly stepping into this prophetic role, he must bring order to the chaos. He must settle the frantic flock before he can feed them. He begins to arrange the thousands of men, women, and children across the hillside. But the specific way he organizes them is not random. It contains a bizarre, heavily detailed instruction that most readers skip right over. Which brings us to a strange command that makes no sense unless you know first-century history. The chaos of 5,000 hungry men, plus women and children, requires more than sympathy. It requires authority. The sun is dropping lower, and long shadows stretch across the hillside. The disciples are still gripped by panic, urging Jesus to send everyone away before a riot breaks out. Instead, Jesus issues a command that sounds more like a military general than a traveling rabbi. He tells the disciples to make the crowd sit down, but he does not let them sit randomly. According to the Gospel of Mark, Jesus gives strict orders, is practical, urgent, and entirely logical. Dismiss the crowd before a public crisis erupts. Let them fend for themselves in the dark. We have them sit in distinct, organized groups of hundreds and fifties, to modern ears. Grouping people by hundreds and fifties sounds like nothing more than a practical crowd control measure, a logical way to distribute food quickly. But to a first-century Jew, those specific numbers rang out like a trumpet blast in the desert. In the book of Exodus, when the Israelites were wandering through the wilderness, the massive, chaotic crowd became impossible for one man to manage. At the command of God, Moses organized the wandering nation into precise units. He appointed leaders over thousands, hundreds, fifties, and tens. By arranging the people in this exact mathematical formation, Jesus is sending a profound, unmistakable message. He is not merely preparing a countryside picnic. He is literally rebuilding the camp of Israel in the wilderness. He is reconstructing the broken nation. The people were frantically searching for a new Moses. And now, right before their eyes, Jesus is structuring them just as Moses did, at the dawn of their history. Mark uses a fascinating Greek phrase to describe how they looked once seated.